Hello, my name is Justin Willey. I'm with Region Christian Online Academy, and today I wanted to take a minute to go over the BC Graduation Numeracy Assessment. So I just want to share my screen with you here, and we'll get started. Now, the first thing I want to do is direct your attention to the link in the description below the video. It's curriculum.gov.bc.ca/assessment/numeracy-assessment, as you can see at the top there. If you navigate to this site, it's got really all the information that you need and all the links that you need to do with the Provincial Graduation Numeracy Assessment. And really, this is your first stop. I would recommend before you watch this video that you try some of the sample graduation numeracy assessments. I'll show you how to log in, etc. And once you know how to do that, you're good to go. But the important thing there is that you engage with the curriculum, engage with the exam before you watch this video. Just watching this video is not really going to help you do better on the test unless you've actually gone through the exercise first. So I want to show you a couple of these links that are important here. There's a set of videos on this website that tell you an introduction to the exam, the different types of questions that are on the exam, and also the skills that they're looking to test during this assessment. Interpret, application, your ability to solve, analyze, and communicate. You'll notice just directly below those videos is a set of printable versions as well as the online sample graduation numeracy assessment. I strongly recommend doing the sample that's online because this will prepare you for the setting that you're going to be doing during the real exam. So if you click on the Try the Online Sample Graduation Numeracy Assessment, it will take you to this page here. This is your samples login page. This will look identical during your real exam. You will need to know your school district if you're a public school. If you're an independent school, you can select your school from a list of schools in the province. To help you out, you can type in the first letter and then it'll bring up with all the schools that have that first letter in their name. You're going to need your PIN number as well. For the purpose of the practice exam, you don't actually need your real PIN number. You can just type in any 9-digit number. In this case, I've just typed the number 9 times, and that is good enough. You also need to put in the subject, graduation numeracy, as well as is it the sample assessment? I'm going to put sample graduation numeracy assessment and then log in. Once you click log in, a window will pop up. If it doesn't pop up, that means that there's something wrong with your computer settings, and you can look on the computer settings to see if there's something that needs to be changed. Usually there's a pop-up blocker in place. So it asks you if the following information is correct. I am a sample student with a random PIN number. That information doesn't need to be correct for today, but on your real exam, you definitely want your name to match. You definitely want your PIN to match. Otherwise, your mark isn't going to get sent to you later in the day or a couple weeks down the road. Usually it takes about 3 weeks before the marks are released. So let's hop into the rules here. When you first open it up, it's going to show you the assessment rules. I'm not going to take time to read all these, but I highly recommend that you do. I want to point out that there can be grounds for a mark of 0 being awarded for inappropriate language or content. So just keep that in mind, as well as any breaking of these other rules. Okay, some frequently asked questions. You are allowed to bring a calculator into the exam. It can even be a graphing calculator, as long as your data has been deleted prior to the exam starting. Any stored data is cleared from those. But it has to be a dedicated calculator. There is a calculator available in the online version of the test, and I'll show you that in a minute. So if you forget your calculator, it's not an excuse. Once you've read over the rules, you can click next to go to the next page. Where's my next button? We'll go to the instructions. These navigation instructions tell you how to use the program. Okay, and how to answer questions. We'll be using some of these tools as we go along. I want to point out flagging, and I'll do that on the first question, how to flag a question and unflag a question so that if you are stuck, you can move on, but you also remember where that question is. Okay, so here's the general outline of the test. You're going to have 6 questions related to each task. And when you complete those, you'll move on to the next task. There's no going back in this exam, so once you've made a decision and moved on to the next section, you're not allowed to go back. One of the goals of the new numeracy assessment is to have a common problem or a situation that learners are working with. In this case, we see water usage. So we have water usage across different cities in the province of British Columbia, and we can see a breakdown of each appliance in liters per day of water usage. So we have this article here, the newspaper headline. We're going to use that to answer the next 6 questions. Notice that when I click the next button, it opens up my first question, and it also opens up the news article in the tab. You're also able to control how big that tab is, bigger or smaller. So if you're having trouble reading, etc., you can make it bigger or smaller or remove it entirely. If you get rid of that, you can have it come back again by clicking the button there. If you need a calculator, you can click on the calculator beside your number icon, and it will automatically bring up a scientific calculator. This is all you need for the test. I recommend bringing your own calculator that you're used to using, because anytime you use a different calculator, it can throw you for a little bit of a loop. So let's start with question number 1. Which of the following communities uses on average between 250 and 450 liters per person per day of water? Now, this is a little bit different than some of the other tests that you may be used to, where there's only one multiple choice correct answer. In this case, there are actually 2 answers, and let's see if we can find them. Let's see, between 250 and 450. Here's 250 on our graph, and we see that Port Alberni is using over 250 liters of water. We also see that here's 450. Whistler is using under 450, but over 250. So there's 2 cities, Whistler and Port Alberni, that use between 250 and 400 liters per day. In order to get this question correct, you're going to need to put in both correct answers. So keep that in mind. There's more than one correct answer there. Okay, which representation of a family's weekly water use best illustrates where and how water could be saved? Well, let's take a look at these graphs. I'm going to make them a little bigger here. We don't really need the article for this section. Make them a little bit bigger, and we'll check it out. Weekly water use. This shows weekly water use for the different parents. The colors, we aren't really sure which color matches which. I guess it relates to, we could look back over to our article and take a look at these colors. But I would say it's not the best graph because it's somewhat confusing, and what do the colors mean, etc. This graph does a good job of breaking down each of the utilities or appliances used, and each person as well as their water use. We see sibling 1's using the most, and a good chunk of that is in the shower, 400 liters in the shower. That's pretty significant. Okay, this one's good at showing us where each of the appliances are using their water, but it doesn't relate to each person. This one has each person's water use, but doesn't necessarily relate to the appliances. So the answer here is this graph here. Okay, a family of 4 wants to calculate each family member's daily water use from the appliances they share. Dishwasher and clothes washer. The family does 6 dishwasher loads and 5 clothes washer loads each week. Select one expression they could use to do this calculation. So let's take a look at these and see if we can figure out what this person thinking about in each of their calculations. We want to know let's see, the family of 6 dishwasher loads and 5 clothes washer loads each week. How many days are there in a week? There's 7 days in a week. Okay. This dishwasher is representing the amount of dishwasher in each load, and the clothes washer is representing the amount of clothes washer in each load. So this is 6 times the number of dishwasher loads plus 5 times the number of clothes washer loads divided by 4. Why would it be divided by 4? Well, we might have 4 people in the house. So we're looking for an average family member's use for each week. Okay, and in this case, we're going to be looking at letter C would be a correct answer here. We have an average for each user, and then divided by 7 will give us the per day use because there's 7 days in a week. Now, interestingly, this answer is also a correct answer. Okay, instead of dividing by the 4 people in the household first, they've divided by 7 days a week and then divided by the 4 people in the household. That gives you the same answer, and both answers are correct. Again, if you chose either of these answers, it would be correct. You don't have to choose both of the answers, but either is correct. Again, a little bit different than some of the other exams you might have been used to in the past, where there's only one correct answer. Okay, our next one is you calculate the average shower length to be 11 minutes and 15 seconds. If everyone in the family of 5 showers daily, how much water would the family use for showering each week? So I'm going to pull out a calculator here. And we're also going to need some information from our table. So a shower, maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger. A shower uses 10 liters every minute. So first of all, we're going to need to figure out how many minutes we're using the shower. Then we're going to have to multiply it by 10. 10 liters per minute. So we have 11 minutes and 15 seconds. 15 seconds is a quarter of a minute, or 60 seconds divided by, 15 seconds divided by 60 seconds per minute will give us a quarter of a minute. So 11 and a quarter minutes. 11 and a quarter minutes. And we have everyone in the house showering. So 11.25 times the number of people in the house, 5, gives us a total of 56.25 minutes of showering between all 5 people. Now, we said that each shower had 10 liters of water use per minute, so we're going to multiply that value by 10. Okay, and now we have in here each week. So we have the daily amount of water use, which is 562 liters. Now we want to multiply that by 7 because there's 7 days in a week. So I'm going to multiply that by 7, and we get 3,937.5. And in this case, there are 2 correct answers when we go to type this in. 3,937 or 3,938 will both be marked correct. Again, it's a good idea to use the electronic version of this exam so that you're used to using some of these tools. It's just not the same when you're using a PDF format. You don't want to be scrambling during the exam trying to figure out how to enter your answer. A friend has worked to reduce their bathroom water use. You compare their current bathroom water use to their previous bathroom water use. You can see a reduction in the amount of toilet water use, a reduction in the tap water use, and a reduction in the shower use. Okay, what can you say about their current bathroom water use compared to their previous bathroom water use? Now, we can use this percent bar here to enter our answer. There's actually a range of possible answers here. The acceptable range is between 20 and 30, or 70 and 80. Okay, so, and that's depending on if you're saying it's a percent increase or a percent decrease or percent of the original. So let's take a look at how you would add or figure this out mathematically. So I'm going to add up my water use, my previous bathroom water use. I'm going to go 65 plus 48 plus 110. Okay, so my previous bathroom water use is 223. Now I would suggest having a scrap piece of paper with you during the exam. You're allowed a scrap piece of paper. Don't write on your examination form, which looks something like this. This is for your written answers, specifically for a specific question. So don't do your scrap work on here, but if you have a different piece of paper you want to do some scrap work on, you can get that from a teacher, and I suggest writing that number down. So 223 is the initial use. Okay, and now we're going to do the total for our current bathroom water use. So I'm going to 52 plus 32 plus 80. That gives me 164. Okay. Now we're going to see, I'm going to divide this by our original amount, 223. That's our current versus our previous. And we can see it's 73 or 74% of our original. Remember, to convert to a decimal, or from a decimal to a percent, we multiply by 100%. So it's 74% of our original, or we could say a reduction of 26%. Okay, either way, we've gone down 26% or we're 74% of our original. The test allows you to answer either way. If you're anywhere between 70 and 80, that's fine. But make sure when you're typing it as current water use is a percent reduction, or current water use is a percent of previous water use. So this would be 70%, 74% of our previous water use, or we put a 26% reduction of our previous water use. So either way there, the answer is correct, but you have to make sure that you select the right answer here. Again, anywhere between 70 and 80, or anywhere between 20 and 30, depending on which method you chose, will work. Okay, a family of 4 decides to challenge themselves to use less water for 1 week. They record their water use. Here's their water use. The family has decided on some strategies to reduce their total use. Which strategies are reasonable? Okay, so this isn't so much a mathematical calculation, but rather to see if you have some concept of what these numbers mean and whether they seem reasonable or not. Okay, in this case, parent strategy 1, fix the leaks. Let's see, where are our leaks? We're losing 3 liters per day, or 21 per week. Okay, fix the leaks. That seems reasonable. Parent strategy our parent 1 strategy, use the clothes washer 1 time a week. Let's see, clothes washer. I feel like I'm missing some information here. Thought there was an individual breakdown. I know there was on one of the other questions. And I actually read the question wrong. Which strategies are unreasonable, not reasonable? So fixing leaks seems reasonable. Use the clothes washer 1 time a week. If you have a family of 5 and you only do the clothes washer 1 time per week, that is probably unreasonable unless you choose to do some other other form of washing your clothes, like in a lake or something. So you're not going to fit a family of 5's clothes, especially with a baby, in the washer 1 time per week. So that's a little bit unreasonable. Okay, what about this? Reduce tap use by 1/4 or 25%. Here's the tap use. So 5 minutes per day, that's reducing by about 1 minute, 15 seconds per day, which would make a huge dent in the total water use. That is a reasonable goal, to reduce tap use by a quarter. Okay, what about this one? Reduce shower time by 1/3. How are our current showers? 8 minutes per person per day. We would be moving that down to somewhere around just over 5 minutes per person a day. That would result in a huge reduction in water use. That seems fairly reasonable. Okay, pack the dishwasher more efficiently to run 5 loads per week. Okay, depending on your family size, maybe if you're just a family of 2, that might be reasonable or not. And the last one, wash and rinse dishes by hand instead of using a dishwasher. Okay, maybe you felt that was reasonable or not. Interestingly, the answer key here allows you to pick both B and F. So if you thought that washing and rinsing dishes by hand instead of using a dishwasher is unreasonable, because you're still going to use water anyways, and you pick that one, or if you pick this one, you would have got a correct answer. So if you just picked this one, it would have been correct. If you just picked this one, it would have been correct. If you picked both of them, it would have been correct. But these other ones are reasonable. So if you pick those, then you get the answer wrong. Okay, so that was the end of the first 6 questions, and we're going to go on to our next section on pit houses. Okay, again, we have an article. We see it's got an overview of the problem here. We're looking at pit houses of the past. You'll notice that each of the numeracy exams also has a First Nations component to it, or First Peoples component. So one of the questions will be related to First Peoples in some way. Going to be guaranteed. Which of the following is required to determine the floor area? Okay, do we need the ladder length, the pit house height, the area required for living space, or the dimensions of the top opening? Okay, if we wanted the floor area, we would need the area required for the living space, and that's the bottom, right? That's the floor area. So the answer there is C. Which expression could you use to estimate how many adults lived in pit houses with a diameter of 9 meters? I just want to interject here. If you forget what the formula is to calculate an area, you can always look in the References tab. And the References tab has some helpful tools here. We have a geometry reference page. And in the geometry reference page, it tells you some important formulas for rectangles, triangles, circles, cylinders, pyramids, rectangular prisms. In this case, it would be nice to have the area of a circle, which is pi r squared. So if you forget that, it's there. There's also a time reference page to figure out how many days are in a year, or months, or weeks in a month, etc., as well as rates of change and slope, and some different measurement conversions. How many centimeters are in a millimeter, or how many millimeters are in a centimeter. So don't forget that. Okay, we want to go back to the question here. So we're going to click on questions. And remember that our formula is pi r squared. Pi r squared. And if we looked on the references page, the diameter divided by 2 is the radius. So pi r squared is what we're looking for. How many adults live in a pit house with a diameter of 9 meters? So let's see. We want to divide that 9 by 2. We know that, pi r squared. And we know for each adult, you need 4 meters squared. Okay, that's from the information from the article. Every adult, 4 meters squared. So we're going to take the total floor area, which is pi r squared, that's this value, and we're going to divide it by 4. Okay, here's a correct answer. I don't see any other correct answers for this one. It's just the third answer here, pi r squared divided by 4. Which strategies could you use to estimate how many people lived in a 12 pit houses of similar size? Okay, so notice that there's a focus on comprehending the question and comprehending the problem more than just spitting out a correct answer. Estimation is also a focus of these exams. Estimate the number of people who live in one pit house and divide by 12. Okay. Estimate the number of people who lived in one pit house and multiply by 12. Okay, that seems a reasonable way of figuring out how many people lived in 12 pit houses. Estimate the total area of 12 pit houses and divide by the area equal or required for one person. That's also a good way of doing things. Okay, or estimate the total area of 12 pit houses and multiply by the area required for one person. Nope, that's going to give you way too big of a number. Okay, what radius is required for a pit house with 3 families? I'm going to go back to that other question. I just want to point something out there. You need to select all that apply. So make sure you're reading the questions carefully. If you only selected one of these, it wouldn't be entirely correct. So you need to select both of them. Okay, the pit house radius is 15 meters. Here's the pit house. This blue line here is indicating the radius. Okay, what is the radius? What radius is required for a pit house with 3 families and 2 couples? Okay, so if we're looking over on the right side here, we see a family needs an area of 10 meters squared. So we have 3 families, that's 30 meters squared, and 2 couples, 7 meters squared each. That's 14 meters squared for a total of 43 square meters. Okay, and notice this question doesn't have a box or anything. You're clicking on the radius to change it. A little bit different than some of the others. There's 2 approaches you could do to this question. You could put in a radius and see if it's big enough. Like we could try 11 and see. Remember, it's pi r squared there. So if we did pi r squared, it would be pi times 11 squared for 380. Okay, is that enough area? Maybe it's too much area. Okay, we only needed 43 square meters. This gives us 380. Okay, so we're going to need to make it smaller. So you could do a kind of guess and check method, or you could do an algebraic solve. In this case, if we wanted to solve it algebraically, we would take that 43. We would take that 43 meters that we need. We know that's going to be equal to pi r squared. So I'm going to do the opposite operation. I'm going to divide by pi, and then I'm going to square root it. And that gives me an approximate radius. Now, the pit house radius here, we can move it to 4 meters. Notice that 3.69 rounds up to 4 and not down to 3. So the answer here, we want more room for the families than necessary. The answer here that we're going to enter is 4 meters. And again, we did that by adjusting the size of the pit house electronically. Okay, if you did have a question about something like this during the test, this is something that you could ask one of your teachers and they would be able to help you with. They wouldn't be able to help you with the calculation, but they would be able to show you how this tool works. Okay, so if you were a little confused about that. Again, another reason to to practice the electronic format first. So we would make sure it's 4 meters, and then we would go to our next question. Okay, you estimate that approximately 10 adults lived in pit house with a diameter of 8 meters. Using this estimate, how many adults might have lived in a pit house with a diameter of 12 meters? Okay, so let's see. First of all, we're going to figure out how much area that is. What's the radius here? They give us the diameter of 8 meters. The radius would be 4 meters. We're going to go pi 4 squared. I'm going to put a multiplication of, whoops. Let's go back. Pi times 4 squared. That'll give me my area. Okay, we had 10 adults living in it. So if I divide that by 10, divided by 10 adults, gives me approximately 5 square meters per adult. 5 square meters per adult. What about a pit house of 12 meters in diameter? That's 6. 6 is our radius. So if I go pi times, times 6 squared, gives me 113 square meters. Okay, 113 square meters, and I said each adult takes up 5 square meters, so I'm going to divide this by 5 square meters. If I wanted to use 5.02, that might be a little more accurate, and I'll round at the end. Okay, that gives me an answer of 22.53. Now, there's 2 answers that would be accepted here. One of the answers is 22, and the other answer is 23. So either or, because it's close enough to the middle, either or would be a good estimate. Notice that the question says estimate on there. So both of those would be correct. Okay, an archaeologist calculated how many people lived in a pit house with a floor area of 63 meters squared. He divided 63 meters squared by 4 and said 15.75 people. This is incorrect. What mistake did the archaeologist make? Well, let's do a little bit of calculation and see if we can see if there's some error. So 63 divided by 4, that does indeed equal 15.75. Select all that apply. The diameter of the pit house is not used. Well, they did in fact use the diameter of the pit house in their calculation, or they might have used it to find the area. So we can't say that that one's not true, even though the only area is given. The diameter is kind of embedded in there, as we saw in the previous question. Okay, the number of people is not rounded. Okay, that is reasonable to say. Okay, that is a mistake. You can't have 15.75 people. It's impossible. So if you chose that one, that would be fine. Okay. The age of the occupants is not considered. Okay, that is also a possibility because we see that a family takes up 10 square meters, 4 people, that's 2.5 square meters per person, whereas a couple take up 7 meters squared, that's 3.5 meters squared per person, and a single adult takes up 4 meters squared per person. So the age is really important there. That is possibly an answer. Okay, the gender of the occupants is not considered. Well, there's nothing that leads us to believe that that gender is important in this one. So it doesn't say anything about men taking up more space than women. They're considered the same as adults. So that's not really a mistake in this case. They assumed only single adults lived there. Okay. That might have been an error in their judgment because they said each person was taking up 4 square meters of area from from the chart here. We see an adult takes up 4 square meters of area. So there's no consideration for families. That would be one as well. Okay, what about fire pit and ladder space are not considered? Well, in these approximate floor area consideration, there is a fire pit and ladder taken into consideration already. But you could have chosen that one as well. Okay, so what's the correct answer here? Well, the correct answer is actually, you could have chose B and C, B and E, B and F, B, C and E, B, C and F, B, E and F, or B, C, E and F. Okay, so as long as you chose B and one other thing that were correct, you would have got this one right. There's multiple answers there. If you didn't choose B, then it wouldn't be correct. If you choose only B, it wouldn't be correct. But if you choose B and any other combination of those other 3, then it would be correct. Again, a little bit different than some of the other exams you might be used to. Again, read carefully, because there is select all that apply. It's not just one answer there. Okay, now we come to the student choice component. This is where you're going to take out your paper that you're going to write on. Notice that there is a question number at the top. In this case, question 13. You want to make sure that your question number matches the piece of paper, because you're going to have 2 pieces of paper to write on. One's going to be for question 13, one's going to be for the last question. You have to make a choice. Which one of these 2 articles spoke to you on a greater level? Was it the water use, or was it the pit house? Which one did you enjoy working with the most? Okay, once you make this choice, you don't get to go back on it. So you only have one opportunity to engage, and you can't go back once you've made this choice, or once the question's shown. So maybe you choose water use, maybe you chose pit house. I'm going to switch over to the PDF format here, because there are some things that you can do on a PDF that you can't do. Whoops. Some things you can do on a PDF that you can't do on a electronic exam. So I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to show you how I would go about solving each of the problems related to the 2 tasks, but I want to show you some examples here. So here's the question, number 13, for water use. You want to reduce your personal water use by 1,050 liters per week. You install high efficiency appliances and fixtures and change your water use habits. Plan a water budget for yourself for 1 week that meets this goal using the high efficiency appliances and fixtures. Explain and justify your solutions. You must use everything in the table below at least once in the week. Okay, I'm going to point out here that each of these statements is really a kind of constraint. And if you don't address all these constraints, you are not going to get full marks. And I want to address how these exams are marked in the first place here. They're not marked, like it's not a percentage if you get so many correct, etc. They're marked holistically. Your mark is going to be a mark out of 4. So the rubric is available, and I'm going to head back to this page here to show you where I'm coming from. In the sample GNA tab, there's something that says marking guide and student exemplars. So I've clicked on that, and it brings me to this page. I scrolled down a little bit here, and you're marked out of 4. 4 being the highest level of achievement, and 1 being the lowest level of achievement. You can also get a no response or a 0. You only get a 0 under the following conditions, okay? So information is simply recopied from the problem. Diagrams or calculations are unrelated. Responses does not address the purpose of the task. An incorrect mathematical solution with no work. Inappropriate response. All work is erased or crossed out. or any zero score must include a rationale. That's not another option. We just pick one of these responses to include with the zero. Okay, so let's take a look. Here's the question, and here's a summary of the requirements to get a 4 out of 4 on this question. So your answer must have a solution that uses less than 1,050 liters per week. Remember that that was a basic requirement of the question, one of the constraints. So that constraint is met if your solution has 1,050 liters or less. Use each of the items in the table once at least. So did you shower at least once during the week? Did you use the toilet? Did you use the tap? Did you use the dishwasher? Did you use the clothes washer? If you said, I'm not going to use the dishwasher anymore, that would not satisfy the constraint. You haven't addressed the problem, and you could not get a 4 out of 4, okay, because you've missed one of those critical components of this question. You need to be realistic. So you can't just flush the toilet once per week. Maybe you want to have a policy like, if it's yellow, let it mellow, and if it's brown, flush it down. Maybe that's realistic. But once a week is not realistic. Okay, you can do a daily budget and show that it's being replicated daily for the week, or can do a full 7-day budget with water use varying each day. So you can either do a weekly budget or a daily budget. Either way is fine, as long as you do a budget. Okay, notice that that is one of our constraints. Plan a water budget for yourself. If you don't show that budget, then that requirement is not met. Okay, provide evidence to justify the budget. This is most likely going to be in the form of a table showing that, and communicate the solution in the context. So you can't just write down your answer. Like if you said, I'm going to use 1,040 liters next week. If you wrote that on your page, you would get a 0 because you haven't actually shown any work on the page. Okay, here's an example of a solution. This one is a table showing the weekly water use as well as an explanation beside each of the appliances. This will get full marks, and it shows the total, it calculates the total of 1,001 liters per week. Okay, this would be a complete 4 to 4 solution. They've used a graph to show their work. It's great. Here's another solution showing the budget for the week and each day of the week and the breakdown for each of the appliances for each day of the week. This one is a little bit more work, right? But it doesn't so much matter that they've used less water than the other person. The goal is not, I can do 500 liters per week. The goal isn't so much that, it's more being able to create the budget, being able to get under the 1,050 liter mark, being able to organize and show your work and explain any assumptions that you made and why they're reasonable. Okay, this person did a good job of explaining their assumptions, like 2 loads of clothes washing per week are enough to have 1 light load and 1 dark load. Okay, they've kind of put those assumptions in there, really great. Okay, what does this look like when you actually go to write this on your page? Okay, this is what your page looks like. You have freedom to explore this space. I want to point out you need to put the topic question in there. There is no precise wording that you need to put in here, but try and match it to the question. So the question will say at the top of it, water use. So you should use that wording, water use. But if you just wrote water or something, you're not going to get deducted marks. Okay, here's an example of a student response and how they met each of the requirements. I'll let you look at that again at the link. Here's another person. Wow, that looks really messy. Just because it's messy doesn't mean it's worth less than a 4. Okay, just because it's difficult to read doesn't mean it's less than a 4. This person has broken down each of the appliances on a per week basis and have said how much water they're going to use and how many times they're going to use each appliance. They've added up all the totals. They've showed their work, showed their calculations, so they'll get 100% for this, or 4 out of 4. Notice that they didn't put 1 letter per box. They didn't even stay on the lines. That does not affect your grade. Okay, it's nicer when things are on lines, or the tables are on lines, or a graph that you make is on a line, but it's not a requirement. So just know that you don't have to put like 1 letter per box or 1 number per box. That's not the case. I do want to say that you should have some form of units when you get to the end, in this case, liters per week. Don't just write 1008, because it's 1008 what? Is it 1008 Oompa Loompas? Okay, 1008 airplanes? No, it's liters of water per week. So make sure you have a unit in any of your questions when you get to the final answer. It's really important there. Okay, I can't also stress enough how important the communication and showing your calculations are. If you don't show any calculations, if you don't write 24 times 7 days, or 24 times 7 is the bare minimum there, and you just write 168, then you're not showing your calculation. These numbers are coming out of nowhere. You just write a final answer, you're not going to get marks for those. Okay. As well, I want to point out, if you cross out any work or erase any work, and it's kind of faintly there or something, it's not used in the calculation of your mark out of 4. Any work that's crossed out is just considered crossed out, and we're not allowed to look at it as markers. So just be careful about that. Okay, if you want to look at what will get you a 3, a 2, and a 1, there's some exemplars there. I'm going to move to the next question. This one's called Understanding Our Past Pit Houses. Again, when you go to do this question, you need to write the question topic in that space. Don't forget to do that, which one you chose. In this case, it's pit houses. They give you a group of pit houses, and we're estimate the number of people that could have lived in this village, state any assumptions, and explain and justify your solution. There's not a whole lot of constraints on this one, but we need to make sure that we follow along with what they're saying. So, did we state any assumptions, like I'm going to round up instead of down because people have a minimum requirement of space? Right? They're not going to have less space than they need. They're going to have more space. That might be an initial assumption. Calculate the area of the small and large pit houses. You must calculate these areas in order to satisfy the question. You can't just go, I'm going to estimate this, I'm going to estimate this, I'm going to estimate this. You need to actually calculate the floor area. 11 meters is not the floor area. If it said 11 meters squared inside here, then that would be an area, but this is 11 meters in diameter. So you need to calculate those areas and estimate the number of people in total, provide evidence to justify the estimate. You might have broken this down by individual pit house. You might have said, you know, for 11 meter diameter, there's approximately this many people living in that pit house. And then you would go, okay, how many 11 meter diameter pit houses do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to multiply by 8 11 meter diameter pit houses. Or you might have taken the total area of all the pit houses combined and then divided it by an area. Either way is a correct way of coming to a solution, and there's a variety of answers depending on your assumptions. Notice that in our answer key, we have a couple of different answers. Okay, a couple of different answers. We can have a range of possibilities depending on how you did this, but you must satisfy these critical components here. You must have calculated the area, estimated the number of people, provided the evidence to justify it, and communicate your solution. Okay, so here the total number of people is 338. If you got a different number in the acceptable range, for instance, this person did their calculation and they came up with 300 people. So it would be equally correct. Obviously, it's not the exact same answer depending on the assumptions that they made at the beginning of the problem. Okay, so it's important to write those assumptions down, show your calculations for the total area of the pit houses, and then dividing by the number of people, etc., to find an approximate answer. What if you got stuck? Notice there's another solution here as well. What if you got stuck somewhere in here and you're like, I don't know how to figure out area of a pit house? Well, if you got stuck, you could come back to this question. Okay. Even though you've made your choice for this question, you can't choose the other question. You can come back to it. If you're thinking, oh, I only have so much time to write this test. I only have 3 hours in total. It's supposed to take me 2 hours. I need more time to write the other written section. You could come back to it, and I would advise doing that. So if you get stuck and you're brain fried, it's often a good idea to move on. I'm going to head back to our electronic version of the test, and I want to show you how you can navigate through different questions. So the Review Index tab shows you the different sections, so the first water use section and the first 6 questions, and then pit houses with those next 6 questions, and then our choice, which comes up after, student choice 1, right? Which one did we choose? We can go back to that. Now, I said I wanted to talk to you about flagging a question. So after student choice 1 is the next question on video game contracts. If I click on question 14 here, notice that I had a little question mark beside it here in my review index. The question mark means that I haven't answered it yet. Notice all these ones have question marks. They're gone. They've disappeared. These ones still have question marks because I haven't answered them yet. So when I click on that, now if I don't know the answer to this question, I want to come back to it. So I'm getting brain fried. I want to come back. I can put a little checkbox beside the question. I put a little checkbox there. And now when I go to the review index, I'm like, okay, I've answered all this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Oh, I have a flag beside this one. It means I haven't answered it and I didn't know what the answer was. So I put a little flag. Then you go back to this question, you check over it again if you have time. I unflag it with the with that little box there. That's what that little box is for. I advise everybody at the end of the exam, when they get to the last question and filled out the last student choice, because you have one more student choice coming out, to take a look through the review index, look over every single question, make sure you have no question marks. They've answered every question. Okay, before you click submit. When you're completely ready, then you can click the submit button. Okay, I have a couple last pointers for you here, and then I'll be on my way. Number 1, a reminder that this exam is marked holistically out of 4. So even though there's 26 questions, at the end of the day, the marker is going to look at your 2 written responses and your other 24 questions, and they're going to come to some holistic marking. Are you mostly a 4? Are you mostly a 3? Are you mostly a 2? Are you mostly a 1? Or are you 0? They're going to mark you accordingly. Okay, again, I want to remind you that any crossed out work on your written is not going to be counted. Okay. And you must address all of those constraints in the question. Okay. As well, a lot of these questions are answered in different ways. So you saw that there wasn't necessarily just one answer. There could be multiple answers, depending on what the wording of the question is. As well, the methods for answering, like we saw in the diameter of the pit house question, can be a little bit different than what you're used to. So just keep that in mind. If you have questions like that, I don't know how to answer this question by changing the size of the pit house radius, then make sure you put up your hand and ask about how to answer that type of question. Okay, again, the link for the BC exam page, this one here, is in the description below. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and do really well on your provincial or your graduation numeracy assessment. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.